Well, it's been quite some time, but I'm back. Gonna start making some things again here, and putting some videos up. Hopefully you guys like them. So it is currently, what is it? It is the 9th of October today, which means it's fall. Which means it's time to do fall things. And in this case, that means applesauce. Well, apples. Apples are coming in. And, yeah, so that means we're making applesauce today to start with. So, let me show you what we got going on here. Ignore the picture of iced tea brewing in the background. So here we go. This is a very, very small portion of the apples that I've picked. I'd say it's at most a fifth, and probably less, probably more like a tenth of the apples that I've picked so far, and there's still a bunch more out on the tree that I gotta get to. I don't know how well you can see them from here, so I'm not even gonna bother showing you. So, equipment we need. Obviously we need a bunch of apples. Ripe apples. It doesn't matter how ugly they look, because they're all gonna get cored and peeled and put in a big pot. Speaking of coring and peeling, a device like this, very, very useful. You can peel them by hand, you can core them by hand, you know, but that takes way longer. This little device really knocks it out. And of course we need a big pot. I've got a 5-gallon heavy bottom. Heavy bottom. The thing is, if you use a small, thin-bottomed pot for something like this, you're gonna scorch things. You might scorch things with the bigger one anyway, but you definitely are going to with a thin-bottom pot. So you want something nice and heavy-bottomed, stainless steel, because it's non-reactive, and apples, you may not realize it, but they're very acidic. So, yeah. So that's what we got going on. Now we're gonna get started with the peeling and coring and get them into the pot so we can get started with our applesauce. Okay, so we're about halfway done, but given that you've seen kind of how the process goes, I kind of feel like I don't necessarily need to do all of these with you. And one of the things too, as you're peeling and coring your apples to do all this, hang on to these scraps, because if you've a notion to, and I do, that can be used to make apple cider vinegar later, and we will do exactly that. So, I'm going to finish peeling these apples, and we'll be back and finish making our applesauce. We got a ways to go. Alright, there we are. Okay, there we go. Let's turn that the right way. There we are. So, 5-quart pot. No, 5-quart. What am I thinking? 5-gallon pot. Mostly filled with apples, as you can see. They've been cored, sliced, peeled. Slicing is not necessary, but it's nice. So now what we're going to do now, one thing, yeah, okay, good. when it comes to applesauce that you need to be careful of is adding too much liquid. Put this down for a second here. Because you add too much liquid, your applesauce is going to be incredibly runny. It's not going to be able to be used for, well, most of the things that you want applesauce for, to be frank. So, I err a little bit on the side of not adding enough liquid to start with. And then as it starts to cook down, if it's too thick, I can always add some more. So what we did there is it's a cup of water and a cup of lemon juice. And you can add some sugar to this if you want to. I think I probably will add a little bit because I don't like my applesauce to be very sweet. So yeah, I'll add a little sugar probably later once it starts cooking down some. So we're doing this nice and low, as you can see. And it just set on 3. It's an electric stove, so you know, not ideal, but whatever. It is what it is. And yeah, so we're gonna let that start to do its thing nice and slow so things break down without scorching. Alrighty. So here we are coming along with our applesauce. You can see how much they're cooking down already. You can also see how much, well, maybe not very well because of the steam. You can see how much liquid is coming out. So that's another reason why you don't want to add a ton of water to this. And of course, some of this would be helped by leaving the lid off, but I was leaving the lid on it to kind of get everything to start heating up. So it doesn't take 5 million years. Alright. There we go, we're coming along. I think we're going to turn the heat up on this just a little bit to kind of speed it along, especially now that we're getting nice liquid release from our apples. We're going to turn that up just a little bit, cover that back up, come check on it again in a few minutes. Alrighty. Get the camera back out of the steam so we can see what's going on. And we can see this is getting much more like applesauce. Now at this point, we're going to splash it up on my arm and burn myself. That's what we're going to do first. It's starting to scorch a little on the bottom. I can feel it with the spoon. So what we're going to do is turn this back down a little bit. We're going to leave This is the problem with applesauce once it starts getting cooked down. It bubbles and spits a bit. As we can see, we've always got the consistency that we want. And it's not too thin, so I think we're good. Or it's not too thick, it's not too thin, so I think we're good as far as water is concerned. What I'm going to do, though, is instead of turn the heat back down, I'm going to get a little sugar, which I got in my big old container over here. don't want a lot because, like I said, I don't like my applesauce very sweet. And yet, about a cup, I think, is plenty. Mix that in real good. Splash more on my arm. God damn, that's hot. I'm going to let that cook just a little bit more because I kind of want the rest of those bigger chunks to break down. I'm going to go ahead and put the lid back on it because I don't want a lot of the moisture to evaporate, because I don't want it to get too much thicker than it currently is. So that'll kind of help keep the moisture contained in it. Let that go a few more minutes, and while we're doing that, I'll go ahead and go grab jars and get my canner set up and ready to go. Okay. Now I turned it off already because, well, my cat was having some issues, and so I had to go clean some things up here. I wanted to make sure that it didn't scorch while I was taking care of that. As we can see, we've got a nice applesauce consistency. There's a couple of little chunks still in it, it looks like. But you know, I'm not honestly going to worry about this. So, I've got clean jars set up, ready to go. And I do my applesauce in quart jars most of the time, as we can see. So what I find works easiest is I'll take my hot pot of whatever it is I'm canning, set it right here in the sink because it's, metal, and so I don't have to worry about anything scorching, and it's lower than the height of the jar, so it's easier to ladle things out into, as you'll see here in a few moments. And then while we're doing that, I will, I've got I can everything in a steam canner, a pressure canner. Okay, so we can see the water is just over the bottom grate, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it's actually called, that the jars sit on, so they don't sit directly on the surface of the pot. So it's just over top of that, and then put it onto the hot burner, and I'll turn it on kind of low because I don't want the water to boil away. So I've got it, medium, I guess. Okay, so that way that's heating up while I do this. So then you just and I've probably got more jars than I need here, but I always like to have more jars than I need, so I'm not having to run and get more and all that kind of crap while I'm filling. And so then you don't want to fill your jars all the way up. I fill it up about, for something like this, about like that. Right. There we go. And then just repeat until we run out of applesauce. Now, something you can do too, if you want seasoned or sweeter, for that matter, is at this point you would give it a little taste and make sure that it's tastes how you want it to. Now, if you want it a little sweeter, add a little more sugar. Now, if you add anything else to it, you're going to want to let it simmer for a few more minutes first before you start canning it up. You're putting it in your jars like this. So if you want it sweeter than whatever it is you've got, or whatever it is I've got, actually, more accurately at this moment, then you'd add a little more sugar. Again, you don't want to go too crazy, but you could add a little bit more. If you want some cinnamon or nutmeg or clove or allspice or any or all of those, you know, assuming you hadn't already added it in. Like when I added my sugar earlier, well, that's probably when I would have done it if I wanted to make seasoned applesauce. But assuming you hadn't already, you could go ahead and do it at this point. Stir it up real good. And then just let it simmer for a couple more minutes. And then put it in your jars like so. And process them. So we're almost through got enough for probably one more quart jar for sure in here, maybe two. Ignore that sound in the background. That's just the cat that I was mentioning a minute ago getting sick again. So that's awesome. So I'll go deal with that here in a few minutes. That's fantastic. Yeah, I got enough in here for a second one, I think. Well, an eighth one. Not gonna need those three though, for sure. So what we're gonna do, because we're kind of literally scraping the bottom of the pan now, we're gonna do just that. We're gonna scrape the bottom of the pan. And if you've got anything scorched on the bottom, like really scorched, you want to be real careful doing something like this so you don't get a bunch of that burnt stuff in with whatever it is you're making. But the quote-unquote scorched bits on the bottom of this are not really all that scorched, so I'm not too worried about getting them in there. Alright. The jar is not quite as full as I'd like it to be, but it's real close. And yeah, so there we go. There's all of those. So then the next thing that you need to do now, when you're hot packing anything like this, that means whatever it is you're putting the jars in is nice and hot. There's two things you want to make sure you're doing. One, avoiding any cold drafts. And two, not letting them contact anything that's particularly cold. In reality, I should have honestly warmed these jars up and then put them on like a towel so it's insulated from the coolness of the counter. I almost never do that. I don't have any I've not had any problems with blowing out the bottom of jars doing this way. Now, that said, I do make sure my jars are at least room temperature. And I do make sure there are no cool drafts. So then you got clean, fresh lids, centered up, and then put your ring on. You don't want to crank the ring down. Finger tight is what all the books say. If I could get this one to go on straight, that would be nice. That one is not wanting to go on straight at all. There we go. I do a little tighter than finger tight, to be honest. But you don't want to go super tight because it can damage the jar. And it can also cause the lid to not seal correctly if you put it on too tight. Because basically what you're doing as you're processing the jars is it's kind of heating up the air inside there, which is also why headspace is important. You got to have some gap of air in there because there needs to be air inside it. But so you heat it up, and of course the air expands as it heats, so it kind of pushes its way out, and then as it cools down, well, it's nice, it's tight enough that it vacuum seals the lid. So what we're going to do, because I have enough jars, this isn't all going to fit in a single batch. So I'm going to just do 4 jars into the canner. Now, because this is usually something that is done in the water bath canner, we're making some adjustments doing it in the pressure canner. Okay? So normally, applesauce is going to be done in a water bath canner, and it's going to be done for like 20 minutes or something like that. Well, because I'm doing pressure, so I'm only doing a 5-pound weight, so that'll build up 5 pounds of pressure inside. So it'll make the inside a bit hotter than 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. Be like 220, 225, something like that Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius. So we're going to just do that. Now, it is still going to need to go for a while, because applesauce is so thick, you want the heat to penetrate well into the middle. So, but because the substance itself is so thick, you need to make sure, you need to give it some time to do that. Now, I don't remember if I said, but one of the things too you need to do when you're doing this is you need to wipe the rims of your jars really good. And the reason for that is if there's a bunch of stuff on the rim, that can also cause the seals to not seal correctly. So we're wiping it really good. We're going to go ahead and wipe these, even though they're not going to go into the canner right away. So it'll kind of help them contain their heat so it doesn't take as long once they go in for the for everything to come up to the proper temperature. Okay. There we go. These ones, the rings are going on nicely. I don't know why that one wasn't cooperating. So then we'll just put these over here on the stove. While we wait for our pressure canner to come up to pressure for the first batch. And basically you'll be able to tell. So you can see this button right here. When it starts building up some pressure, this button will push up and it'll lock, preventing the lid from unlocking. And then we know we've gotten the right pressure when it's built up enough that this pushes up and allows the pressure to vent out. And so that's when I'll know I need to turn my heat down from high so it maintains pressure instead of constantly trying to vent, and start my timer. So we're going to let that start doing its thing. We'll come back when it's about up to pressure and show you the real simple process of that. Alright, so here's what I'm talking about with that button. And I don't know how well you can hear it, but you can hear just where I can hear tiny little hisses. Yep. Just like that. So I know on my stove what that means to maintain that pressure. I set it at about 4.5. 4.5. So as it vents pressure, it'll calm itself down. And it should maintain that. Now, I forgot to set the timer. What we're going to do is set this for 15 minutes. And that should be enough. Now, if that keeps doing that, what you're going to want to do is turn it down a little bit, because it should only do that kind of occasionally once it stabilizes. I'm thinking because there's so few jars in there to kind of be absorbing some of that heat. That's why it's... Yeah, I need to turn this down a little bit more. A little bit more. That's fine. So now we'll let that go for 15 minutes. Well, 14 now. Until it's done. Then we will remove it from the heat to our prepared spot right over here and let it cool down until it depressurizes. And once it depressurizes on its own, because you do not want to like vent pressure by lifting the weight or anything like that, because that'll cause everything to cool down too quickly, and you can have, because there's still that temperature and pressure built up inside the jars, it can actually cause everything to force its way out through the lid, and then you lose half of your contents. So you need to let it depressurize on its own. It can take 10, 15, 20 minutes. You know, it is what it is. And then remove the lid and remove the jars. So we'll let that do its thing and be back in, well, about 13 and a half minutes now. Alright, here we go. So you can see, buttons down showing that it's depressurized. Ooh, ow. Steam was kind of hot. That's alright. Normally I do that with two hands, so a little difficult this time. So then these jars are going to be very, very hot, hence the gripper. And you want to remove them nice and gently to a couple layers of thick towel is the best. If you heard that pop, that was one of the jars already, the lid already sealing. They say the thick towels are good because it insulates it from any cool of the table, and it doesn't let drafts get underneath it and blow out the bottom of your jars. You want to make sure that you're doing this in a spot that isn't drafty and all that kind of thing. So now we'll load these up, do the same thing all over again. This, by the way, is about the noise the canner should be making when the temperature's set right. Not very much. Means it's maintaining right around that 5 pounds of pressure. The beep a minute ago was me turning the timer off, so it's done. So we're gonna go ahead and turn that off. Of course, as I move it, it wiggles the weight, causes it to release. And that's okay. Then we'll sit there, let it sit here till it cools down enough to depressurize, and remove those last 4 jars. So this is how I normally would take it off, as opposed to the last time. Much easier to not get steam burned that way. And here we go, just like last time. Just gently remove the jars to your cloth. Nice thick cloth. And I didn't mention last time, but I want to mention it this time. You want to make sure that the cloth you're using is cotton or some other natural fiber, which usually is going to mean cotton, because the synthetic ones can melt, so you don't want that. So then you just let them sit and cool. You want to let anything you do sit for at least 12 hours, if not longer. 12 to 24 is kind of the minimum-ish. So, but yeah, there it is. That's everything. So then we'll let that cool until tomorrow, and then put it all away down in the pantry to be used as needed. And that's all there is to it. That's making applesauce. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope if you're new around here, you decide to stick around. There'll be a lot more where this came from, with a lot of different things. Yeah. So anyway, have a great day, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.